Okay, I'll call this meeting to order for the Vacaville City Council meeting. And we have roll call, please.
Council Agency Authority members Harris.
Here.
Ashburn.
Here.
Sullivan.
Here.
Vice Mayor Beatty. Is my Vice Mayor Beatty available? Mayor Chair Roulette.
Here. With that, would you please rise with me for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. City Manager, do we have any revisions for the agenda tonight?
No, we do not, Mr. Mayor.
I have a motion.
Move approval.
Second.
I've got Harris and Mashburn as a second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Harris.
Yes.
Mashburn.
Aye.
Sullivan.
Yes.
Mayor Roulette.
Aye. We'll move to item 4, approval of the minutes. I have a motion.
Move approval.
Move approval.
Got
Or second.
Mashburn and Harris. Can I get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Harris.
Yes.
Mashburn.
Aye.
Sullivan.
Yes, sorry.
Mayor Roulette.
Aye. We'll move to item 5, presentations. We do have a proclamation for our Public Works Director. I'm hoping Sean is on the line with us. I would like to read his proclamation. Whereas we have gathered today to recognize and celebrate Sean Cunningham's 30 years of outstanding service to the citizens of the city of Vacaville. And whereas Sean was hired as an assistant civil engineer for the traffic department on May 14th, 1990. His knowledge, skills, and expertise were recognized through his promotions to Associate Civil Engineer, Senior Civil Engineer, Deputy Director of Public Works overseeing engineering services. In July 2008, he was promoted to Assistant Director of Public Works and appointed as the Director of Public Works May of 2016, where he has excelled setting clear expectations, streamlining the process, and providing clear and concise rational across the city and to the value and purpose of public works standards and by supporting staff at all levels. And now, therefore, I, Ron Roulette, Mayor of the City of Vacaville, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim July 31st as Sean Cunningham Day in the City of Vacaville and wish Sean the best of health and happiness in his retirement. And Sean, if you're there and listening, we did a proclamation for the STA. You've worked on multiple projects. I could have went all the way through that whole proclamation. You can see all the things you've done. You've brought $35 million of funding in for our Jepson Parkway project, which is amazing. It's beautiful. It's halfway done. We're going to continue to work on it as you retire. You're working on, and you've got the plans for the new 21st Century Administration Building, which we appreciate. You've made that from a trailer into something that's going to be beautiful one day, and hopefully you'll come back and do a ribbon cutting with us. And Sean, I just want to thank you for all you do. You answer my phone calls every day. I know I've probably been a pest over the last 12 years, but I do appreciate all your hard work, and you're taking my phone calls all the way through the evenings. Thank you so much. And if any other council member would like to speak, go ahead.
Sure, this is Ddla. Sean, I'd just like to say thank you so much for your work. Job well done. Really appreciate you and look forward to seeing you around town where you're more relaxed and able to enjoy the community with your family. Take care.
And so we got Vice Mayor Beatty on the line. So he is now in the meeting. I just wanted to report that. Sean, are you on the line? Are you there? Or are we just...
Yes, I am, Mayor.
Okay, there you are. Did you want to say a few words? I want to give you an opportunity if you want. I don't want to put you on the spot, but the mic is yours.
Well, I just wanted, first of all, I wanted to say, thank you for the kind words. And I appreciate, I don't mind taking your calls, Mayor. I appreciate the leadership that you've brought to the council. I'm not going anywhere, so I will see you around town. I promise not to show up at any council meetings, though. So I just, 30 years went by in a blink of an eye. It was a great career, a great choice I made to work for this city. I think we do a lot of things right in Vacaville. Public Works has a strong culture that's been built over many years, even before me. And I was proud to be part of it, and hope we can keep that culture alive going forward. So thank you for the proclamation, and it's been an honor serving the city of Vacaville.
Thank you so much. With that, we'll move on to item 6, the consent calendar. I'll ask anybody from the council if you want to pull anything off tonight's consent calendar. Hearing none. Anyone from the public that would like to pull anything off the consent calendar? Are there any phone calls for this? Hearing none, I'll have motion for consent.
Move approval. Or second.
I don't even know which one was first or second, so we'll put Mashburn second, Ddla first. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Harris?
Yes.
Sullivan?
Yes.
Mashburn?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Beatty? Vice Mayor Beatty?
Can someone call him and help him with his mic, please?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Aye. For Roulette.
Thank you.
With that, we'll move to item 7, business from the floor. This is the time to address the city council with issues that are not on this agenda and are within the council subject matter jurisdiction. Do we have anyone on the phone tonight?
I have Wendy Brecken on the line. I'll open her mic.
Thank you very much.
Hi, this is Wendy Brecken. I was just calling because I wanted to ask about the CBDG program for that was approved, I think, a couple weeks ago for giving grants to downtown businesses. And I just wanted to ask about, will the criteria that will be used to grant those funds, will that be going back to the city council for approval? If not, how do businesses find out about the criteria and things like that?
Aaron, would you like to answer that question?
Yes, the criteria was established as part of the approval process that we shared with the council. It was spelled out in terms of having to comply with the HCD guidelines for CDBG eligibility. We are compiling all of that into an outreach packet that our economic development team will share with all of our local businesses for usage. And that will include an overview and an outline of who's eligible, how to comply with those criteria, as well as resources for our team to help anybody who has any questions about their eligibility or how the program works. I suspect we'll also put all that information on our website so anybody and everybody can have fair access to that material.
Thank you, Wendy. Is there anybody else on the line?
I have Sarah Palmisano. I'll open her mic.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Hi, Sarah.
I have a couple things. Curious, Mayor Ron Rowlett, why do you believe that your judgment in our representation is better than your own? You've consolidated power in a way that's extremely troubling in what is considered a democracy. After the upcoming election, you will have appointed 2 seats, which will be out of 6. And that is 1/3, and that is a problem. I'm also highly concerned about a call that I received from the police this morning about a protest. Police shouldn't be calling protesters about protests. I don't talk to cops, frankly. So I just said I didn't know anything about it. And honestly, I'm not planning it. But it is inappropriate that your police are calling our folks who are planning on practicing their First Amendment right to protest in our city. So that is, it really feels like an intimidation tactic, and that's not okay. Thirdly, the police town hall was truly abysmal. We were told there would be dialogue. We were muted if we tried to respond. Carly was defensive. Our questions weren't answered, and they were marked as answered in the chat. It's really troubling that Chief Carly seems to believe that there is no structural racism in Vacaville. And if there is, from someone else's perspective, that, you know, he can solve it by having a cup of coffee and introducing himself. These are all extremely problematic and troubling issues that are happening in our town. And these things need to be addressed in some way, shape, or form. The police overreach, calling someone that they thought was a protest organizer is just absolutely unacceptable. And I think we need to have a conversation about First Amendment rights in Vacaville, or some sort of agendized discussion or town hall about that, because it truly feels that those are being stepped all over. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Do we have any other callers?
I have Julia Hahn. I'll open her mic.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I just wanted to make note. I was trying to find something, and it seems as though minutes are not kept for this meeting, or if they are both inexact and infrequent. So like every third meeting or so has minutes. It would be helpful. I'm pretty sure that's something that you guys are supposed to have kept. Secondly, Councilmember Harris had asked for a study or some sort of determination as to how much it would cost for a special election for the districts. And since that is going to be coming up, I'm just wondering when I should expect that number to be coming out, where you guys are at with that. Is that something that is coming up? And then I would just like to reiterate that a mail-in ballot only for a special election, even if it is an at-large seat for Councilmember Mashburn's seat when he does give that up, would be a preferable outcome to an appointed position. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other callers?
Alan Johnson, I'll open your mic.
Hi, Mr. Mayor and Council. I just wanted to speak on behalf of small business owners and the citizens to echo your sentiments about Sean Cunningham. I've had a chance to meet with him and work with him over the years, and I just want to say that he will be missed and tell him thank you.
Thank you. Any other callers tonight?
Ravonte Robinson, I will open your mic.
Thank you.
Good evening, City Council. I just wanted to address the elephant in the room, which was the police town hall that we just had with John Carly. I feel like we honestly didn't really get anywhere. The community was gaslit for 4 hours, and there was a part towards the end where someone asked him a question about some minors who were basically tackled down on the street by a cop. And John Carly just got unhinged for a little bit. He just grabbed this big stack of papers and was talking about that night was like Fallujah and all this stuff. And so I just want to make a simple request. I think for transparency, if John Carly wants to pick up that, that stack of papers and wave it around, I think that he should release those papers so that people know the information that's in there. so that we can determine for ourselves if it was necessary, because I have a strong feeling that it might have been a bunch of rumors that were started on Vacaville that might be part of that police report. So I just think for transparency, those papers should be released so we know, so we know what's going on in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll look into that. Any other callers?
Connor Fitzgerald, I believe. I'll open your mic.
Hello. I have very specific questions regarding an incident that happened a few years back, either late 2017 or early 2018 to be exact. Due to toxic environmental situations and physical health issues, I became suicidal and attempted to throw myself off the roof of my house. Luckily, I didn't due to a friend of mine stopping me. My sister had called the police. When help arrived, they not only failed to de-escalate the situation, but in fact made it worse. I was handcuffed and had to walk through the emergency room in those cuffs. I was not a threat. I was calm by the time police had arrived, and I had no weapons on my person. I repeat, I was not a threat. The officer who cuffed me said it was, and I quote, "It is protocol." This was an extremely uncalled for and unprofessional response to someone going through a mental breakdown. I felt embarrassed, humiliated, and degraded, especially having to walk through the ER in those cuffs. My questions are, 1, is it protocol to handcuff a person even if they are not a threat? 2, is that protocol the same for someone having a mental health crisis? If yes, why do you think that is an appropriate reaction and response? If no, why are the Vacaville police allowed to make up protocols? I want this agendized and I would want answers ASAP. Thank you.
It will not be agendized, but we'll have someone reach out to you with those answers. Thank you. Any other callers?
Caller ending in 488, I'll open your mic.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. This is Teresa Stout, and I just had 2 comments. And one of them is a lead-in for Emily, which I know you're on the line at this point. But the first one is for Sean Cunningham. As a resident of this community, I so appreciated his candor and his knowledge of everything I ever asked him, and the fact that he called back and he was always available to the public. So appreciated. Didn't always like what he had to say, but loved what he did and did for the community. So thank you, Sean. The other item is last meeting, there was a city council vote on the grants to small businesses and for the senior meal program. Emily, you left me a message today regarding the senior meal program and that there were some changes to it, and I know that that needed to be made public. So here's your lead-in for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other callers?
Danielle Shea, I will open your mic.
Hi, my name is Danielle Shea. I'm calling in today because I'm a lifetime resident of Vacaville. I'm an educator in the community, and somewhat recently I've been getting more involved in community matters. So I was really excited to see that you guys were having a town hall to discuss like police matters, to connect with John Carly, to basically just connect the community with the Vacaville Police Department in light of political escalations of late. I thought it was a really great idea. I was excited to participate. I was also really excited to have the opportunity to see kind of what the police department stance would be, considering they were eerily quiet. They have a pretty large social media presence, but had been pretty silent on the matter of racial injustice. So I was really excited to hear that. Unfortunately, I just don't think that what happened lived up to the description. I mean, it said it was supposed to be a discourse with the community in the event description. There wasn't really any discourse. I know that my question was not answered. I asked a question in the chat, and it was marked as answered on live, which it didn't happen. I heard a lot of people express experiences or recount experiences with racial injustice and racial profiling by the Vacaville Police Department that were just immediately discounted. At one point, Chief Carly even said, like, I just can't believe that would happen in my community, when his community members were telling him it was happening. When I asked a specific question about police overtime and budgetary concerns, he didn't answer the question. He spoke for several minutes. And then when I went to ask a follow-up question or kind of redirect his response, my mic was forcibly muted. So I just think I was really concerned because I thought that this was an opportunity for the community to have discourse during the town hall meeting. And we didn't get that. I feel like a lot of people were unsatisfied at the end of the call. I know that I very much was. So in the interest of transparency, you guys are our community representatives. I don't feel like during that we were represented or even heard. And I think, like, as a follow-up to that, I ask that there be more opportunities for town hall meetings to talk with Chief Carly or our other representatives specifically about racial injustice and the things that are going on right now in our community and the United States community at large. So I'd like to see more town halls in the future. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Do we have anybody else on the line?
Caller ending in 211, I'll open your mic.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Alicia Minion. I have a follow-up question to what Wendy was asking regarding the criteria for the CDBG funding for small businesses. And I was wondering, are there going to be formalized policies and procedures on how the funds will be allocated? So, for example, if you have, more applicants than there is funds available, how will those funds be prioritized among the applicants? Even if you utilize the first come, first serve, everyone could apply at the same time. So hopefully that's something that you guys are working on and will address. Thank you.
Thank you. We are working on all of those issues that could arise, and I know Tim's doing a great job with Emily Cantu, and we are working that out. If you'd like to give Tim a call tomorrow, I'm sure he can help you with that answer. Any other callers?
Moto E5, I'll open your mic.
Hello? Caller, are you there?
Hello, good evening.
There you go. Go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Roy Tobler. Good evening, City Hall Council and Mayor. I'd like to address the issue, if it does concern the public, with the cab service. As I understand it, that the Vacaville Police Department is in charge of registering and being in charge of evaluating the drivers as well as the dispatchers. And I had an incident last Friday because my son is privately educated to a teacher in Fairfield. So I wasn't able to go last week due to being at the City Hall, and it took a little extra time because they don't have enough drivers. And so a driver left me and my son there. And so they sent another driver by that time when I was halfway home. So my wife had called in to question the incident, and the dispatcher told my wife that she didn't have time to deal with the trash. So I wanted to address the public because you have drivers out there and it's a safety issue. And these drivers need to be checked out because they're doing unsavory acts out there under the influence of substances. And I'm quoting a fact. So we were left at home last week when my son missed Friday at school. Last Friday, he was able to resume the school today, and he goes to a private teacher on Tuesdays and Fridays. And this is a situation with the cab service because they run it the way they want to in the evening hours and in the early morning. And the city needs to be more involved with it and evaluating and watching out there. You have drivers out there driving under influence, and I know for a fact because I'm one of the people that's in the car riding with them, and that's very unsavory and it's very unsafe. And I'd like that to be addressed. So whoever's in charge of establishing safety with these drivers and the activity out there in the early hours in the morning and when they need to be safely on the road, I would appreciate if it would be addressed appropriately. Because this matters.
Thank you for your comment. Thank you for your comments. We will definitely check up on that. Any other callers?
No callers at this time.
Okay, I'm going to close public comment, and we will move to item 8A. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the City Council. The first item tonight is a resolution approving a disposition, development, and loan agreement between the city and Eden Oak Grove investors for the development of a residential apartment project on city-owned property. Daniel Herta from our Housing Department will make the presentation.
Thanks, Aaron. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and City Council members. Tonight, Council is being asked to hold a public hearing and consider approval of the disposition, development, and loan agreement, DDLA, between Eden Oak Grove Investors LP, a legal entity created specifically for this development by Eden Housing, and the City of Vacaville to transfer housing property for the construction of 67 restricted apartments. Next slide, please. In June 2019, Council approved an exclusive negotiating rights agreement with Eden Housing in order for Eden to investigate the feasibility of a development on the site and to negotiate terms of the DDLA with staff. Eden has a reputable history in building and managing properties with a portfolio of over 10,000 affordable units, with 640 units here in Vacaville, including the apartments located next to the proposed new development. Next slide, please. And the proposed development includes 67 restricted apartments and a community room to serve new and existing residents. The city housing property that would be transferred is outlined in the white dotted line, and a private property acquisition by the developer of the adjacent properties seen on the map in the orange dotted outline. Together will make up a total of 2.11 acres of the site. The existing Eden-owned apartments are also outlined in solid yellow on the map. Next slide, please. The key terms for the DDLA will include a city loan contribution of a $2.5 million pre-development and construction loan, and the value of the property at appraised fair market value. The loan terms will be at 1% interest with residual receipts payments. Rents will be restricted to 30% and 45% of area median income, which is $27,750 and $38,160 a year, respectively, and for 55 years. There will be efforts to hire local contractors, and prevailing wages may be required depending on final funding sources that the developer is required to pursue. Next slide, please. This proposed development would make a positive impact on the city's regional housing needs allocation requirement by reducing the very low income deed-restricted unit count by 66 units. Staff has identified the required findings for meeting common benefit to dispose of city property and the necessary environmental review considerations related to the California Environmental Quality Act and the National Environmental Policy Act. Next slide, please. If council approves tonight, the next steps would be through the entitlement process, including finalizing the development details, begin the environmental review process for CEQA and NEPA, conduct public engagement and outreach, and finally the development would return to a future city council meeting for consideration. Next slide, please. So staff is recommending that the council approve the DDLA with Oak Grove investors and authorize the city manager or his designee to make modifications as needed. There's no impact to the general fund. All funding will come from the low and moderate income housing asset fund. And we are happy to answer any questions you have for staff, and or any questions for the developer. Li-Ben Xiao is available as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Are there any council members that have any questions before I open it up to the floor? Okay, I'll open it up to the floor. Are there any callers?
Caller ending in 488, I'll open your mic.
Good evening again, City Council and Mayor. I went through it. The staff report had 150 pages, so I'm sorry that I couldn't look at it really, really well, but I do have a couple of questions. So regarding the property itself, when it had first gone into an exclusive agreement with Eden Housing was last year on June 11th. And it is my understanding, and I couldn't find it anywhere in government code where it is different, is that real property that is no longer needed for current or future municipal purposes shall be considered surplus property. This particular piece of property came up because the property on Brown Street was taken out of the picture, and so this one had come into play, and it had never been considered surplus property. So in order to have gone into an exclusive agreement and then now to go into sale, it would have needed to have gone that route, I do believe. Not completely certain. I did talk to one of the city folks, and they said that it also depends on where the property originated. So we do not have an answer for that one. The adjacent property for the community room and such, that property has not yet been purchased, is not yet executed. How will that fit into the contract? And then the final thing is the length of term of the agreement. I got down about page 119 on it, and the closest thing I could find out is that there were 3 different ways that the length of term for the agreement came in, and none of them matched the government code 54225, which is a payment period of up to 20 years for any contract of sale of public property. So if we could get those kind of answered, and then so basically if we're looking at 67 units that's based on 2.11 acres, what happens if the adjacent property does not come into play? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Daniel, can you answer some of those questions, or should I direct it to someone else?
This is Emily Cantu, the Housing Services Director. I'd be happy to answer the questions. Sure, thank you. Thank you for the questions. So the adjacent property is not yet purchased is under contract, and the developer plans to finalize that purchase if the item with the city is approved this evening. So it's contingent upon City Council's approval. The ability to enter into this agreement for this property is allowed, and in the staff report, and it was mentioned in the presentation, a finding is made to that effect to allow this purpose for the common benefit. And the City Council, if approving this item tonight, would be also making that finding that allows it to be sold for this purpose. And the term of payment, because it is an affordable rent-restricted housing project, the city is able to allow below market terms, or terms that are different from a normal market or other payment terms.
Okay, is that it?
I believe I answered the question.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other callers?
Yes, caller ending in 211, I'll open your mic.
Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me okay? It's Alicia Minion.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Hi. So I just have a couple questions on the promissory note. So the loan, the term of the loan, it matures in 2075. So it's a 55-year term. Is that allowed? I mean, that length of time? And then also, I was just wondering, what's the basis of having such a long-term loan? I mean, is this loan really intended to be paid back? I guess that's my question. And because when you look at the default, the definition of default, it just doesn't seem like a traditional, real loan. So I had a question about that. And then actually, it wasn't clear what the source of funds were where the loan proceeds were being derived. And if you could just explain that. And then also, in looking at the staff report, this is separate from the promissory note. There was a chart and it mentioned some RHNA figures, RHNA. And I didn't know what was meant by, there were some numbers under the title of deed restricted, and I didn't know what that meant. Thank you.
Thank you. Great questions. Ms. Cantu, do you want to answer those questions?
Yes, sir. Thank you. And yeah, I appreciate the questions. Those are really good questions. So the city is allowed to have the 55-year loan term. In fact, in order to credit the units towards our regional housing allocation, which I'll answer that question in a moment, we have to have a 55-year term for affordability. The loan is intended to be paid back over time through residual receipts. So once the property is able to meet all of its operational obligations, any remaining amounts would be paid back to the city. So it's not a set amortization schedule, but dependent upon the income earned by the property each year. The source of funds is the Low Income Housing Asset Fund. Those funds come from primarily loan repayments of the former redevelopment housing fund. So when redevelopment existed, the city had loan programs. As they're repaid, they go into the housing fund and must be used for affordable housing purposes. And then the question on the RHNA chart in the staff report, I'll just walk through it really briefly. It is showing you that the required number of units that the city must produce for the very low income category for the period of 2015 to 2023 is a total of 287. They can be either deed restricted, like in this example where there will be a deed restriction which requires affordable rents for 55 years, or they could be non-deed restricted if a private person restricts the rents on their own without any city documents. So between 2015 and 2019, the city has deed restricted 34 units at the very low income level. And this development, if approved tonight, would add an additional 66 deed restricted units, lowering our city requirement from 287 to 187 remaining units to produce between now and 2023. And I think I captured everything.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other callers?
Julia Hahn, I'll open your mic.
Hi there. First, I just want to say congratulations. This is a great project and I'm really for it. I think this will have a huge impact on the wait list for low-income housing. That being said, do we have any information on the agreement with Eden thus far? I know they took over the previous low-income housing unit in Vacaville. Do we know if eviction rates have stayed steady, if they have gone up, gone down, anything like that? if there is any sort of evaluation on their management style from the residents. Just if we're going to add another property to their management, it would be nice to know that they're doing a good job first. That's all.
Thank you very much. Emily, do you want to answer that?
Yes, we do monitor all of the Eden housing owned and managed properties in town. We don't specifically get information from residents, but we do ensure that they're meeting all of the requirements that the city has as far as income levels and, occupancy standards, and also property maintenance and upkeep. Generally, I can say that, our experience has been very good, and they are excellent partners, and they do, as mentioned, have a really strong reputation in the affordable housing community overall for the state.
Great, thank you. Do we have any other callers?
No additional hands at this time.
Great, I'll bring it back to the council. Can I get a motion, please?
I had a question first, if you don't mind.
Oh, please, go ahead. No, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay. So Emily, this is Ddla. Do you know if there are any ADA units also within this housing project? I've been told, especially over the last couple of years, accessibility units are very difficult to find. So is that a requirement, or is that actually part of this project?
Thank you for the question, Councilmember Harris. ADA units will be required as part of the development approval, so I don't have an exact number of units that will be required, but there will be a certain number of units that must be ADA accessible.
Okay, so there's not like a percentage that they have to meet. There's a different formula that's used.
I would have to defer to the developer. I believe that's in building code, which I don't have any knowledge of off the top of my head.
Okay, it would be nice to know if someone could get back to us. I mean, even if we approve it, I think it's a great project. It would be nice to know if how many are accessible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great question. Councilmember Harris, do you want to make the motion?
Sure. Move approval.
Second, it's Nolan.
Okay, I have a motion, Harris, second, Sullivan. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Harris?
Yes.
Mashburn?
Aye.
Sullivan?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Beatty?
Vice Mayor Beatty, are you there?
Star 9. That's to request.
Mayor Roulette.
Can we leave his line open? Is there any way just to leave his line open? And yes, aye. We'll move the item. Is that Vice Mayor Beatty?
No, this is City Manager. We'll try to connect with him and make sure that we can.
Okay, I appreciate it. We'll move to item 8B. Mr. City Manager, do you want to start it off, or do you want me to just give it straight to Mr. McLean?
I'll tip it off. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay.
Item 8B is a resolution confirming delinquent refuse collection accounts. Brian McLean from our Public Works Department will give you a brief staff report.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. I'm going to turn it over to Samantha Brown, our Management Analyst and Recycling and Solid Waste Coordinator.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. The item before you tonight is a resolution confirming delinquent refuse accounts as submitted by Recology Vacaville Solano for the processing. Next slide, please. Great. Chapter 8.08 of the Vacaville Municipal Code requires all residential and commercial property owners to subscribe for and pay the city's contractor for garbage service at rates that are set by council. Next slide.
Crystal, next slide.
Thank you. Article 8.01 of the city's franchise agreement with Recology Vacaville Solano entitles the contractor to a delinquency fee. Fees are charged each quarter and are equal to $10 or 10%, whichever is greater, of the total unpaid balance due. However, compounding of delinquency fees is not permitted, meaning fees may be assessed on unpaid balances only and may not be assessed on any previous delinquency fees. Next slide, please. Invoices are considered delinquent if left unpaid after 90 days, and at that time, the contractor may assign the delinquent bill to the city for lien processing. Next slide. The purpose of the lien process is to recover lost revenues for the contractor and to prevent those lost revenues from being passed to other rate payers in the form of higher collection rates. Next slide. Delinquency notices were sent to both resident and non-resident property owners in February and April of this year. The third and final notice was mailed on June 18th and once again notified property owners of their delinquent accounts and advised them of tonight's public hearing. The letter also stated that if the matter hadn't been rectified prior to tonight, the past due amount would be placed on the upcoming tax rolls. Next slide, please. As of 5 p.m. yesterday, Recology Vacaville Solano reported 634 delinquent accounts totaling $197,044.83. This amount represents 480 resident property owners owing $154,171.22, and the remaining $42,873.61 owed by 154 non-resident property owners. For comparison purposes, the total liens presented last year was $203,936.33 from 618 accounts. Next slide. There is no impact to the general fund as a result of tonight's action. However, the lack of a lien process would result in higher garbage rates for the rate payers. Next slide. That concludes our presentation. The recommendation is by simple motion to adopt the subject resolution. We'd be happy to take any questions you have.
Thank you very much. I'll open it up to the public. Are there anybody from the public that have any questions?
Caller ending in 211, I'll open your mic.
Hi, it's Alicia Minion again. So, is there actually a clause in the Recology agreement that if people become delinquent, that they can pass the unpaid garbage fees onto other ratepayers? Yeah, because I was my understanding that that contract kind of sets the rates for everybody. So I was just wondering if that's contractually embedded in the contract, that if there are delinquencies that Recology can, compensate for any loss onto the ratepayers. And number two, I mean, I do think it's troubling that a garbage company that I think should be an unsecured creditor would actually place a lien on real property. What law are you relying on that would allow you to do that? I mean, is there any kind of federal or state law that you're relying on that a garbage company with your cooperation can place a lien on a resident's real property because they didn't pay their garbage bill?
Okay, thank you for the questions.
Sure.
Does anybody want to answer that for me?
Mayor, I can answer that. This is Brian McLean.
Thank you.
On the first question regarding is the lien process documented, iterated within the current RBS agreement, the franchise agreement with the city of Vacaville? And the answer to that is yes. And the second part, the municipal code of the city of Vacaville outlines specifically that the processes and procedures as have been demonstrated tonight by Samantha in outlining the procedures the city takes in recovering these funds and setting the lien so that Recology can actually recover these funds through that lien process.
Thank you, Mr. McLean. Any other callers?
No additional hands at this time.
Thank you very much. Can I have a motion?
I have a question.
Move approval.
Well, I have Councilmember Sullivan. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm not sure if we have Recology staff on the phone tonight or if this is a city staff question, but so the 90-day delinquency clause, we're right in the middle of the biggest unemployment crisis and soon to be housing crisis that we've had in 15 or 20 years or so. Is there like a hardship clause or an appeals process? I mean, if a client lost their job because of COVID, or if they're in a serious housing situation, they could somehow demonstrate to Recology that hardship. Is there, I guess my question is there some sort of formal appeals process built in before this comes to us to put a lien on their house?
Yeah, and I'm going to let them answer it, but we get this every year, and that same question comes up every year. And yes, Recology does a fantastic job. They're already reaching out to those people. They're trying to set up, and this has been answered by Recology. I'll let the staff answer it, but I know that year after year, that same question comes up. It's a great question. I'm glad you asked it. And I'll let, I guess, Brian, you want to answer that?
I'm going to pass this to Samantha.
Right. That is a great question. Thank you. And the mayor is correct. Recology Vacaville Solano continues to work with customers on an individual case-by-case basis. So any customer facing challenges is encouraged to contact Recology directly to discuss possible options or arrangements.
Thank you very much.
We're approving clients tonight who didn't engage in that process or maybe were non-compliant with that process.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I think Councilmember Harris, you made the motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Harris?
Yes.
Mashburn?
Aye.
Sullivan?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Beatty?
Aye.
Mayor Roulette?
Aye. We'll move to item 8C. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. This item we're actually continuing to the August 11th meeting in order to allow for noticing requirements.
Thank you very much. We will move to item 9A, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the council. This item is a consideration for the city of Vacaville to contribute funding to Cap Solano JPA in order to extend the Project Room Key projects that are being implemented in Solano County. I will turn it over to Emily Cantu, our Housing Services Director.
Thank you, City Manager, for the introduction, and good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and City Council members. And thank you for consideration of this item, and I'll jump right in. If you can advance the slide, please. So the City of Vacaville is a member of the Cap Solano Joint Powers Authority, along with 6 of the 7 Solano County cities, and also the County of Solano. The purpose of the Cap Solano group is to work to end homelessness and poverty countywide. The JPA has been awarded about $12 million in federal, state, and local grants, and the 2020 budget is about $5.1 million. Staff is appointed as a board member to the JPA, and the city fills the role of fiscal agent and program administrator for the JPA. Next slide, please. In response to the COVID-19 pandemic, Senate Bill 89 was passed and signed by the governor and proclaimed a state of emergency and supported the urgency to provide non-congregate sheltering to homeless individuals to help prevent the spread of COVID-19 and also reduce the impacts on hospitalizations. SB 89 provided $100 million towards this purpose. So Solano JPA and Solano County each received direct funding from that source of funds. That was then allocated to open and operate 235 non-congregate hotel beds, including wraparound services. Those were available for homeless at risk of COVID-19, and the projects are known as Project Room Key. Solano JPA also contributed almost $1 million towards these projects. The project in Vacaville under this funding ended at the end of June, and the projects in Vallejo and Fairfield ended just under this funding ended just a few days ago. Next slide, please. Just an update on the Vacaville Room Key project. 6 of the 10 occupants were moved to a permanent housing situation. And in order to allow additional time to rehouse the remaining 4 occupants, the city extended those 4 rooms to the end of this month. Subsequently, Solano JPA received additional grant funding. It will be awarded to extend the Vallejo and Fairfield projects through the end of August. Same with the Vacaville project. Instead of having folks who are housed in those hotel rooms return back to homelessness and the risks associated with the COVID-19 pandemic, the extension allows additional time to work to find permanent housing for the 174 people that are occupying 135 hotel rooms. Next slide, please. July 16th, the city received a letter from Solano JPA, which acknowledges that the program's ending at the end of August is not going to allow enough time to rehouse all of the participants, which includes 7 Vacaville residents. Solano is requesting that the city contribute $50,000 to further extend Project Room Key until Solano receives additional anticipated state funding, which is expected in September or October. The JPA would like to continue reducing the risk of COVID-19 illness or death, transmission, and of course, support hospital surge capacity. Fairfield and Vallejo have expressed commitment to a $50,000 contribution each. Solano County staff has indicated they will ask the Board of Supervisors to consider a $50,000 contribution at their meeting on August 4th. And the niche has expressed commitment to contribute $25,000. Next slide, please. So, staff would like the City Council to consider some options about a possible contribution to Solano Joint Powers Authority to extend Project Room Key. One option would be to contribute the requested $50,000 using City CARES Act funds. The city is going to receive a direct allocation of $1.2 million of CARES Act funds through this current state budget, and Project Room Key is an eligible expenditure. Another option might be to contribute $39,060 from CARES Act funds. This amount is based on 7 Vacaville residents occupying the project for 30 days. The City Council could discuss and decide to contribute some other amount of CARES Act funds, or the City Council could decide not to provide a contribution. Next slide, please. Staff is recommending that the City Council consider and approve whether they will make a contribution, and if so, the amount. There's no general fund impact. CARES Act funds are allocated as part of the state's approved budget and are anticipated to be received in early August. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Cantu. I would just like to make a comment, and that is, during this pandemic, our crew have been out actively working with our homeless, and we actually had some more homeless that were camping out on our streets that decided they wanted to get into the program. We were able to make that happen. I appreciate Chief Carly making that happen immediately, and also our city manager. I'm leaning towards the 50,000 because if we should happen to get any more homeless out there, I know that we would be able to get people in, and I definitely want to make the contribution. I think it's been an asset to us, and helping our homeless is our priority. So are there any other council members before I open it up public comment?
I have a quick question. Oh, go ahead.
I'll go with Councilmember Sullivan first.
My question, Emily, the last we discussed homeless issues, it was a little while back. The county had not yet shared point in time count numbers for Vacaville. They were only sharing the county's total cumulative numbers. Do we have a current updated point in time count for either homeless families or homeless individuals in Vacaville?
I think the police department has a count of homeless persons in Vacaville, and the Joint Powers Authority released the countywide numbers. And the next count would be 2021, I believe, so coming up.
So as you're sort of the expert on homelessness, or one of the experts on homelessness in Vacaville, how many homeless families would you say are in Vacaville, and how many homeless individuals would you say are in Vacaville today? What's a ballpark number that we can take to the bank?
I think the number that the police department and our department use as our guide is approximately 70 to 80 persons at any given time. It fluctuates as the population is somewhat transient.
So that's great. So with these 7 beds, where do the other 90% of the folks typically stay? Do we have other options for them, or where on any general night would those other 60 to 70 people reside, or what options do they have?
The police, I hate to speak, I'm not trying to speak for you, Chief Carly, so please feel free to jump in, but the police crew division works with the homeless community and also their social worker that's on staff on a daily basis, providing resources and options and opportunities. And whenever someone is ready to take that step, we do everything we can to place them in an appropriate shelter situation.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Councilmember Harris, I believe you had a question.
I did. So Emily, I think through your report, you mentioned something about less than a handful in Vacaville. The others are from Vacaville, but they're staying in maybe Fairfield. Is that the case?
If I'm understanding your question, right now there are 7 Vacaville residents in either the Vallejo hotel room or the Fairfield hotel rooms, and we have 4 Vacaville residents here in the Vacaville hotel room.
Okay, and so the 39,000 or the 50,000 basically takes care of 11 people or so. Is that?
It would be geared towards the 7 in Fairfield and Vallejo, as the city's currently funded for the Vacaville rooms.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. That's my only question.
Thank you. We'll open it up to the public. Are there any calls from the public?
Roy Stockton, I'll open your mic.
Hello, Mayor, City Council, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. We can hear you loud and clear. Go ahead.
Okay, outstanding. It sounds like Vacaville's numbers have gone down since the tiny shed thing from 100 to 90 to 100 to 70 to 80. So that is good news. I'm curious as to, depending upon the contribution we make, how many beds or rooms does that contribution guarantee us for Vacaville homeless? And that's it.
Okay, thank you. Emily, did you want to answer that?
Yes, thank you very much. The contribution would be for the 7 Vacaville residents that are in the hotel beds currently that are not funded.
And the way I understand it, Ms. Cantu, is it would be $39,000 for those 7. We're offering 50 because that's what they're asking for. And the reason why I'm leaning towards that is if we do find more homeless that are willing to get in those programs, we would have the opportunity to house them.
That's a good correction. Thank you very much.
Yes. Okay, any other callers?
I see no additional hands.
I have 2 more quick follow-up questions, Ron, sorry.
Yeah, Councilmember Sullivan, go ahead, sir.
A quick follow-up question. Emily, this is sort of related, but kind of unrelated. So first question is, do you have any updates on Project Home Key? And then my second question, we hear a lot about the JPA doing lots of stuff in Vallejo and Fairfield and other places. And I know we hold like the administrative contract and you're the chair and we do all this extra kind of stuff, which I believe we're compensated for. But it seems like there's just not a lot of JPA action in Vacaville. My second question is, are you going to do a follow-up report at some point in time talking about kind of where the JPA is headed across the county and maybe what it is actually providing back to Vacaville tangibly? So first question is any update on Project Home Key? And second question is, will we get an update at some point in time on the JPA overall and then specifically what it's doing in Vacaville?
Go ahead, Ms. Cantu.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for the question about the home key. So staff has attended a webinar, or a few of us have attended a webinar to learn more about the home key availability and the eligible uses of those funds. And we are putting together ideas of what application we may be able to submit to apply for these competitive funds. And as far as an update to the JPA, I'd be happy to work with and discuss it with the city manager, something that may work with the council schedule.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If I don't have any other questions, I'll entertain motion.
I'll move it.
Second.
Sullivan and Harris, roll call, please.
Councilmember Harris?
Yes.
Ashburn?
Aye.
Sullivan?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Beatty?
Aye.
Mayor Roulette?
Aye. We'll move to item 9B. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the City Council. This is a resolution ratifying the July 23rd emergency order from last week that was created to expand upon a temporary outdoor business program in response to Council's direction at our last meeting. Our Economic Development Manager, Tim Patton, will provide you with a brief presentation.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members. Tonight, staff would like to present the first of 2 staff reports related to the expansion of the city's outdoor dining program. This item will ask for council's approval to adopt a resolution that would ratify a recently signed emergency order by our Director of Emergency Services, our City Manager, to allow for an expanded retail base to operate outdoors. You can go to the next slide, Crystal. So just kind of an overview of the program. We actually went to council initially on June 9th of this year to put forward a program that would actually allow for outdoor dining on public right-of-way. This was primarily focused on downtown Vacaville. 2 weeks later, we came back to council on June 23rd and asked council to adopt a resolution that would allow for outdoor dining on private sidewalks and parking lots as part of the temporary outdoor dining program. The following day, on June 24th, our city manager, acting as the director of emergency services, executed an emergency order to allow this outdoor dining program on a citywide basis. The new emergency order that was signed last week on July 23rd supersedes the June 24th, 2020 emergency order. And similar to the outdoor dining program, this program would essentially, staff would allow for, or continue to work with the Chamber of Commerce, the BID, our social media channels to promote the program for new retail uses to be done on public right-of-way. The duration of the program would last until the end of the year, similar to the outdoor dining program of December 31st. And the fiscal impact, there is no fiscal or budgetary impacts with the adoption of this resolution. Next slide, Crystal. So in the last month, there's actually been quite a few activities, both at the state and local level, that have directly impacted our businesses, particularly small businesses. There have been 2 state orders that have had a profound impact on our small businesses. The first was on July 1st, where there was a state order prohibiting indoor dining. And then the second state order was on July 13th that would prohibit indoor services for additional businesses such as, gyms, salons, and other kind of personal services oriented businesses. City Council approval of the June 23rd emergency order, that was at the July 14th council meeting 2 weeks ago. At that meeting, council directed staff to expand the temporary outdoor dining program to other businesses to allow for businesses to operate outside. The California Department of Health department issued guidelines for outdoor use of gyms, places of worship, personal services on July 20th. And last week, as mentioned, our city manager, acting in the capacity of Director of Emergency Services, issued a new emergency order. Next slide, Crystal. The July 23rd, 2020 order executed by the city manager as the Director of Emergency Services creates a new temporary outdoor business program which allows for the following businesses to operate outdoors. First, places of worship and providers of religious and cultural ceremonies, museums, galleries, wineries, office for non-critical sectors, retail, gyms, fitness centers, hair salons, barbershops, and personal care services. And this is all in addition to what we currently have in place with our outdoor dining program. To be eligible for the outdoor dining program or for any program for an outdoor business program, you must be ineligible to conduct business indoors. Only those businesses that are not allowed to operate indoors at this time would be eligible for the temporary outdoor business program. Next slide, please, Crystal. Only all authorized outdoor businesses operating under the resolution must remain in full compliance with all state and county orders regarding reopening and operation and orders. Next slide, Crystal. The proposed program allows businesses to utilize public rights-of-way, including sidewalks and parking spaces, private sidewalks and parking spaces in shopping centers. All businesses must obtain approval of a temporary outdoor business permit. We're about 3 weeks into the outdoor dining program, and it's been a pretty smooth process in terms of a quick turnaround by our planning department to review all the applications and approve outdoor dining as quickly as possible. So we anticipate this program to have as equally a smooth transition. Outdoor businesses cannot interfere with adjacent business uses. You can go to the next slide, please, Crystal. Here's some illustrations of possible business uses for the outdoor business program. For instance, you can do like perhaps an outdoor spin class in a parking lot. Places of worship could also occur in a parking lot or an open field. And then certainly everybody needs a haircut. So, outdoor haircuts could occur under this program. So these are just some of the activities that would be a part of this program. Next slide, please, Crystal. So our recommendation this evening is by simple motion, adopt a resolution to ratify the July 23rd, 2020 order of the Director of Emergency Services, City Manager of the City of Vacaville regarding outdoor business options on the public right-of-way, including on-street parking, and temporarily suspend parking requirements to allow for privately owned parking lots, courtyards, and other open spaces to be used for businesses. Essentially, this is an expansion of the outdoor dining program to include these new uses. And that's really the key difference in this presentation. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions the council might have.
Thank you very much for the presentation. If I have no questions, I'll open it up for public comment. Are there any callers for public comment?
I have Corey Ann Tunstall on the line. I'll open her mic.
Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you clearly. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a quick question in regards to opening up businesses to work outdoors. What would be the point of permitting businesses to work outdoors when so many businesses have continued to function inside the business itself, violating the order to close without any retribution?
Is that your statement, ma'am?
And how will you regulate parking? So I guess that is my question. How would you regulate parking, and why would people bother doing anything outdoor when they are still being able to do everything indoors without any consequence, citations? That's it.
Okay. Thank you for your call. And I'm going to ask Chief Conception. Can you handle the first question for me, Chief?
Sorry,
Chief Conception on?
Unmute button. Can you hear me?
I'm sorry, Chief. Go ahead.
Yes, as far as the first question there, the state orders are very clear that that it only pertains to operations indoors, and that's the reason why you got the presentation by Tim in the emergency order to assist our businesses to move outdoors. And we continue as far as our education campaign, and we do not have the staff to patrol the city as far as compliance to the orders. So it's based on a complaint. It's our enforcement, if you will, is complaint based. So once we receive a complaint, then we go out to the business and we educate them as to the state orders and how to best comply with it. And then we try to help them and make them aware of the programs that the city is trying to implement as far as helping them move their operations outdoors.
Thank you, Chief. So basically what you're saying is someone complains about a business, we go out and educate them and make sure they understand what they're supposed to be doing, right?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Chief. And then I'll go back to Tim. Tim, do you have answers for the parking?
Yes, I mean, for the on-street parking, whenever there's an outdoor dining permit application or an outdoor business application that will soon be forthcoming, we will, as part of the permit application, we're asking businesses to outline any sort of on-street parking that they might envision as part of their permit application. And so currently we have one restaurant on Main Street, for instance, La Brigada, that has secured 4 on-street parking spaces. And we closely monitor that situation and make sure there's adequate parking on Main Street. So there's going to be a little bit of a trial by error situation with this program. But we hope that as we closely monitor the parking situation, specifically on-street parking, that we can help alleviate any sort of parking issues by kind of monitoring the situation closely.
Thank you very much. Any other callers?
Connor Fitzgerald, I'll open your mic.
Hey, I just had a specific question regarding cutting hair. How are you supposed to socially distance at all? I guess I get it's outside, but if you're cutting somebody's hair and one of the people's sick, you could get the other person sick. That's it.
Thank you very much for the question. Tim, we're working under the governor's guidelines, and the governor is allowing this, correct?
That is correct. The governor recently repealed an ordinance or code 7317, and this allowed for barbershops and salons to work outside of a secured establishment.
Great, thank you so much. Do we have any other callers?
I have a handful of callers. Kimmy, I will open your mic.
Caller, are you there?
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am, go ahead. Yes, we can hear you, go ahead.
I believe I heard the police chief say, it's saying that I'm muted. Can you hear me?
No, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Sorry. That the police are only able to reach out to the businesses that are not complying if a complaint is filed. Is that with the police department by calling the police department, or is there a place on the website, on someone's website, to file a complaint?
It's actually a county order, so the complaint goes to the county gets a hold of the city. And I believe it's on the county website.
On the county's website?
Yeah, I'll let you finish. I apologize. Go ahead.
No, I'm just wanting to make sure I understand, like the website where the dashboard is, someplace in there, there's a link or something that indicates this is where to file a complaint about a business?
Yeah, I just want you to be able to finish your 3 minutes and then we'll answer your questions. Do you have any other questions?
No, that was just my concern. I'm glad someone else already asked about the parking, because I was concerned about parking lots being full of businesses and not being able to drive through them to other parking.
Right. Great question. And so, thank you very much. I'll have Chief Conception. Chief Conception is our fire chief. It's not through the police department. So, Chief, can you help?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So the enforcement, as far as the businesses, are through code enforcement, which is under the purview of the fire department. And as far as contacting code enforcement, you can go ahead and send an email to cinfo, that's the letter C, and then info at cityofvacaville.com, and we will receive that and process it. And then also you can call the fire department main line at 707-449-5452.
Thank you, Chief. Next caller, please.
Brooke Fox, I'll open your mic.
Good evening. I just want to thank Tim for his additional hard work on this measure. Our businesses downtown are still struggling to get through this next chapter, and so this will enable a very small margin of them, but some of them to perhaps continue operating legally. So important to know that this is a temporary measure, so definitely concerns about parking are valid, but they are temporary. And one thing I will say is that since some of the businesses have started moving outside, there's actually been an increased awareness about those businesses, people stopping and saying, hey, what gym is this? Who is this trainer? Like, how can I sign up? So it's actually sort of generating some new interest in some longtime businesses. So just want to thank everybody's efforts to push this forward.
Thank you very much. Next caller.
Sarah Palmisano, I'll open your mic.
Hi guys.
Sarah, are you there?
I'm here. So what if people, we report businesses that are knowingly flouting the laws, and they go and educate them, and then they knowingly flout the laws and go on national TV and flout the laws. Are they ever going to face consequences for flouting the laws and ignoring the measures that have been put in place?
Is that your full question?
That's my whole question.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. I'm going to bring the Chief Concepcion back to answer that.
Sure. We're gonna try to gain voluntary compliance as best we can, and we're going to try to coordinate for those that openly defy the governor's orders. We will have to we'll have to coordinate between us and the county and the state as far as best actions to take.
Thank you, Chief. Next caller.
Roy Stockton, I'll open your mic.
Hello. My question's quick. I'm wondering what is the cost for the outdoor temporary operating permit, and does it go through the city or is that through the county and resource management?
Great question. Tim, you want to answer that?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We do not actually have a cost for the actual temporary outdoor business permit. It's free of charge. It's a relatively easy permit or application to fill out. It's about 5 minutes, and it's through the city, and the city approves it within 1 day usually, and but there's no charge.
Do we have any other callers?
No hands at this time.
Okay, I'll close public comment and entertain motion.
I have a couple questions.
Oh, Councilmember Sullivan, go ahead, sir.
Thanks. So my first question is for Chief Concepcion. There was an article in the paper this week about the governor's task force, and they came through town. It looks like cited a couple of businesses. Can you tell us about what's happening and who that is and kind of what is going on there? And then my second question is for Tim. Tim, do we have any sort of survey census data yet on the economic damage from COVID? Do we know what businesses are closing? Do we know who's struggling? Do we have any sort of data, I guess, at this point? Those are my two questions.
This is Chris Concepcion. So to answer
go ahead.
Your first question, Councilman, I read that same article, and we as a city are not getting contacted by what the governor's calling his enforcement strike teams. All we know is we've been made aware that they have been in and around town and have visited a few of our businesses and have actually cited a few of our businesses for being non-compliant with the governor's orders. There was a list of them in that article that you read, and I think there were 3 or 4 businesses that in Vacaville that were listed amongst a few others throughout the Sacramento area. Most of the non-compliance citations that they issued were for not being in compliance with the mask mandate.
Thank you, Chief. Tim, did you want to field that second question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Sullivan, we do have a 13-question survey that will be issued later this week to a number of businesses. We have obtained contact information through our revenue department to issue a survey via email, and then we're actually going to have to make a lot of phone calls because we didn't have as many emails as we thought we did associated with business licenses. But that will be going out this week. It's a 13-question survey that will kind of gather data on how businesses have been impacted, whether or not they received SBA loans, there's a couple open-ended questions regarding things that they like to see from the city. So that'll be issued this week.
Thank you, sir. Any other council members have any questions? If not, I'll entertain motion.
Move approval.
Second.
Harris, Sullivan, roll call, please.
Second.
And Mashburn, third. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Harris,
Yes.
Ashburn,
Aye.
Sullivan,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Beatty,
Aye.
Mayor Roulette.
Aye. We'll move to item 9C, Mr. City Manager.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before I move on to item 9C, our city clerk notified me that we need to go back to item 9A very quickly to clarify the council's action. We understand that you're recommending approval of some funding amount. We just need to clarify as part of the motion, and then if we could take a confirmation of the vote by roll call vote, that would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, I apologize. I thought we were doing the 50, but you're right. We never clarified. Harris, were you the one that made the initial motion?
Yeah, 50.
Okay, you want to just make a motion for 50,000?
Sure, I will clarify that the motion was for 50,000.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You want to second that, Sullivan? I believe you were the second.
Yes, I'll second.
Okay, can we have a roll call vote for 50,000, please?
Councilmember Harris,
Yes.
Ashburn,
Aye.
Sullivan,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Beatty,
Aye.
Mayor Roulette.
Aye, and thank you for that. Now we'll go back to 9C, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. So item 9C is a resolution issuing a City of Vacaville emergency order for the City Council to allow extended use of public property and public facilities for additional outdoor business programs. This is similar but different. And once again, Economic Development Manager Tim Patton will be making a presentation.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Good evening once again, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members. Item 9C before you is the second of two staff reports related to the expansion of the city's outdoor dining program. Whereas the first staff report on this item tonight dealt with an expansion in the sense of adding new types of businesses for the outdoor dining program and extending it to more retail and personal services oriented businesses. The second item before you deals with more of a geographic expansion for businesses to operate on city property and facilities. And we'll go to the next slide, please, Crystal. Some kind of general overview of the public property and facilities outdoor business program. Council directed staff 2 weeks ago at the July 14th council meeting to explore expanding a temporary dining program to allow for gyms, places of worship, personal care services to operate outdoors. This task was accomplished with item 9B, which was just approved as the temporary outdoor business program. The council also directed staff at that same meeting to evaluate how those same businesses and uses could be allowed on other city-owned property and facilities. Next slide, please, Crystal. Based on the number of requests from businesses for outdoor space and as a means to provide some economic assistance, staff is recommending that City Council authorize the use of city-owned properties and facilities. City-owned or city facilities and properties include parks, vacant parcels, outdoor spaces adjacent to city facilities. Staff is also recommending that the customary fees required by the Parks and Recreation Department be temporarily suspended during the duration of this temporary program, which would run through the end of the year. Next slide, Crystal. Some kind of examples of facilities that could be utilized. Ulatis Park, for instance, there's a picture of a wedding ceremony. And then Andrews Park, just that could be used for a number of different activities. Outdoors, could be a yoga class, spin class, a place of worship. Kind of the activities that were outlined in the previous staff reports. Next slide, Crystal. So what are the key differences from the outdoor business expansion staff report to this staff report? One, the city must temporarily suspend the prohibition against the use of parks and recreation areas for private gain under the Vacaville Municipal Code, Section 12.28.111, that currently prohibit businesses from engaging in their business activities on public property or facilities. Number two, businesses will be required to execute a facility license and use agreement with the city and provide evidence of required insurance prior to commencing any use of public property or facilities. Third is staff recommends temporarily waiving the rental fees, license agreement fees, so businesses have the ability to operate safely and successfully during the COVID-19 economic recovery by allowing use of available public property and facilities. A deposit will be required, and this is pretty customary for your Parks and Recreation Department. So a deposit is still required, but all fees are waived. And then the fourth kind of key difference is this emergency order of the City Council is, this emergency order is from the City Council, not an emergency order from the Director of Emergency Services, our City Manager. So the order would need to be signed by our Mayor. Next slide, please, Crystal. And then our recommendation for this evening for the outdoor business program on public property and facilities is by simple motion approved resolution of the City Council of the City of Vacaville issuing the City of Vacaville emergency order of the City Council allowing use of public property and facilities for businesses during COVID-19 emergency and temporarily suspending the collection of rental fees for use of these properties and facilities dated July 28, 2020. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you for the presentation. Any council members have any questions before I open it up to the public?
I have a question.
Mitch, I did one.
I'm going to start with Councilmember Harris.
So I was wondering, I anticipate there's probably going to be quite a bit of requests coming in to utilize these spaces. So how is determination going to be made? Will there be a waiting list? How is it going to work? How's the process going to work?
Thank you, Councilmember Harris. We will have Parks and Recreation, for instance, very involved with the scheduling process. As we get applications in and they are approved, they will be involved with, it'll be essentially first come, first serve in terms of qualified applicants through the license use agreement. But there will be a schedule that's maintained by Parks and Recreation staff on our city facilities and city properties to ensure that there's no conflicts with either another business entity, or existing maintenance activities on our public facilities.
Okay, so one other question. I mean, I sort of anticipate that some of the parks are large enough you could have more than one entity at the same time. And so is that allowable? Is it going to be one entity per public space?
Yes, it would be allowed in terms of like Andrews Park, for instance, has considerable open space, so there could be multiple different uses. And so when the schedule is maintained and we receive applications for times for services and activities, we will ensure that there's no kind of conflict between two or more different activities in one location.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Councilmember Mashburn, do you have some questions?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. I just had one, and this is something that Councilwoman Harris brought up the last time we spoke about this. We are addressing this for businesses, but we also have a lot of faith-based organizations in the city who may want to utilize this service. And I was wondering if that is permissible and if that is something that we had considered and might be part of this. That was
Thank you, Councilmember Mashburn. Yes, absolutely. Faith-based services, places of worship, churches are certainly a part of this expansion opportunity on public facilities and public property.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll open it up to public comment. Anybody from the public want to speak on this item?
Brooke Fox, I'll open your mic.
Hello again. Just wanted to issue a couple comments in regards to this particular item. Some concerns, because actually this item is a little bit more critical to some of my downtown businesses that don't have adjacent parking lots to utilize because it's such a crowded area down there. So there are several businesses that would like to use the parks to operate, specifically their fitness businesses. And so what I would ask is just for as much flexibility in the program as possible, so that the businesses can keep the customer experience as close to consistent as possible, i.e., if their class was at Thursday at 6, it should be allowed to continue at Thursday at 6, just in a new location. And also, I also ask that preference be given to try and keep these classes and events close to the business location as possible, because that's also something that matters for the consumer for consistency's sake. And of course, I would ask that the deposit be waived. I'm not sure if that's a possibility, but the last thing we want to do right now is create any kind of barrier for our struggling businesses to utilize these facilities. And to Councilmember Harris's point, multiple use at and should be permitted. So thank you very much, and looking forward to the rollout of this program.
Thank you. Did we catch everything that she said? She cut out there on my phone. Kim?
Yeah, there was some cutout of her comments toward the end.
Okay. Tim, did you catch everything?
I also lost some of her.
Where'd you lose me?
You just cut off.
We're talking about multi-uses.
Yes, per Councilmember Harris's point, I believe multi-uses should be allowed at each location. And then my last point was about specifically the deposit. And we would request that the deposit barrier be waived so that there's no barrier for businesses to participate. Can you still hear me?
Thank you. Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear. Thank you for clarifying.
Yep. No worries.
Anybody else on the line?
Roy Stockton, I'll open your mic.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. We can hear you loud and clear. Go ahead, Roy.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. And I'm assuming that this is open to existing businesses, that they're eligible. Is this also open to new businesses from outside of the area? And if so, is there a way in the criteria that we can give first come, first serve preference points to existing businesses that have already been operating within the city of Vacaville?
Is that the end of your question, Roy?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you for your question. Tim, did you want to answer that?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The intent of this program would be focused on existing businesses that have not been allowed to operate indoors at this point based on state orders. So that is the intent of the program. If a business does not have a business license, they cannot participate in this program. So this is really kind of catered towards our existing business base.
Thank you, Tim. Any other callers?
I see no hands.
Thank you. I'll close public comment. Entertain motion.
Move approval.
Harris approval.
Second.
And I believe Sullivan second. Can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Harris?
Yes.
Mashburn?
Aye.
Sullivan?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Beatty?
Aye.
Mayor Rolette?
Aye. We will move on to item 9D. Mr. City Manager, did you want to start that one?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the City Council. This is our bi-weekly update from our Chief Concepcion, giving you an update on the latest activities associated with the COVID-19 virus and the activities happening in the region. With that, I'll turn it over to the Chief.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir. We can hear you fine. Go ahead, sir.
Great. Crystal, next slide, please. With every briefing, I give you the latest numbers as far as California as of today. 466,550 cases. That's an increase from the last 2 weeks ago, from the last council meeting of 130,000. Deaths, there are 8,518. It's an increase of 1,431 over the last 14 days. As far as the 14-day positivity, as far as the number of people they're testing versus the number of people that are coming up positive over 14 days, at the state, it's 7.5%. This is an increase over the last reported of 7.1%. More specific to Solano County, we're up to, as of 4:30 this afternoon, 3,388 cases. That's an increase of 1,075 over the last 2 weeks, or actually almost, it's a 46% increase over a 2 week period. So in the last 2 weeks, 46% of the cases were reported. The good thing is the number of active cases in the last 2 weeks did decrease to 223 cases. There are currently 58 patients that are hospitalized. That's an increase of 3 over the last, and then there have been 5 deaths over the last 2 weeks. That brings the total up to 36. Good news in Solano County is that 7-day positivity rate, which 2 weeks ago was at 6.7%, is now down to 5.8% as far as the number of patients that are testing positive for corona. And then specifically to the city of Vacaville, we're up to 578 cases. That's an increase of 200 cases over the last 2 weeks. Next slide, please. As far as the governor's orders or the state orders that there were a lot of questions about already, there haven't been any significant changes with the orders. Still, to the extent possible, indoor operations to that list there that you see in front of you can be moved outside. Since the last council meeting, the state did take action through the licensing boards to allow for example, hair salons and barbershops to move outside, because as of the last council meeting, they were not allowed to. So hopefully some of our businesses in the city will be able to move their operations outdoors to remain in compliance with the governor's orders. Next slide, please, Crystal. In Vacaville, we're continuing, as I've already mentioned tonight, we are continuing to comply with the state and the county orders. We're continuing our education and engagement efforts. The number of complaints is at a steady rate, and it's keeping our code enforcement folks quite busy in educating our businesses as far as how to comply with the orders, and to the extent that we can, we're trying to help them to get their operations moved outdoors so that they can be compliant with the orders. And then on a regular basis, we get inquiries all the time from residents and businesses on to how best they can comply with and try to help with clarifying some of the orders. Next slide, please. A big issue, I'm sure you've seen the numerous letters that have gone to the council asking that we open up our fields to youth sports. And so we have gone to, we had a focus meeting on this to discuss this, and also went to the county to get some clarification. And so I just want to cover what is allowed versus what is not allowed. So as far as activities outdoors that are allowed, it's anything that where social distancing it can be done, then that is allowed. For example, we've reopened the Graham Aquatic Center to lap swimming. Obviously, people are able to run, walk, whatever, outdoors, as long as social distancing can be done, and that is actually, in fact, encouraged. The one thing that is not allowed, in fact, is clearly not allowed by either the state or the county orders, is team sports of any sort. And to the extent that that if there's any kind of equipment that they're not allowed to use any shared equipment. And the reason why team sports are not allowed is because usually they use a ball or some other equipment that is touched by numerous players. So that's why they don't allow the team sports at this point. The only equipment that is allowed to be used, for example, are like gym equipment and free weights that can be sanitized between the times that different users use them. The one thing that that we got clarification for, and our youth leagues are being allowed to do on the fields, on the city fields, is sports conditioning. But there's a very clear definition of what sports conditioning is, and I'm not going to read through that whole thing, but it's definitely it has to have its two primary goals. It's either to improve athletic performance or prevent or reduce injuries. It specifically prohibits the playing of any games, and in fact, unless it's between family members, a simple game of catch at this point is just simply not allowed. The only thing that the conditioning that's allowed by the youth leagues at this point is the conditioning. So we have had a couple of questions as far as, what is the number of folks that can gather at the same time on and use these fields for conditioning. And there's no specific number as long as social distancing can be maintained. Unfortunately, we have fielded numerous complaints from the community as far as full-on games that are going on at our fields, and we have observed a few of these that are happening. Those are not in compliance with the agreements that we have with the various youth leagues, and so those and unfortunately those are sometimes mostly happening at times where code enforcement is not working. We don't have a 24/7 operation as far as code enforcement is concerned. So those folks will get contacted by our PD and asked to stop those activities. So just wanted to update you on that. At this point, unfortunately, I know the request was to make our fields available to more of the youth leagues, to allow them to as far as conditioning. Unfortunately, the activities that are happening on there are not in compliance with what the governor has ordered, or nor the county has ordered, and so we're going to keep our fields closed for anything unless there is an existing agreement with a youth league, and we're going to enforce the agreement very closely as far as what is allowed and what is not allowed. And next slide, please. That completes my presentation, and I'll be happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Chief. Any of the council members have any questions for the Chief tonight? Seeing none, I'll open it up to public comment. Anybody from the public?
No hands.
Great. We'll move to item 10, reports of the city manager.
I have none this evening, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, I'll move to item 11, report to the City Council. Anybody from the City Council want to speak tonight? Hearing none, I'll move to item 12A. Can I have a motion?
Moved.
Second.
Harris moved and Mashburn seconded. Can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Harris?
Yes.
Sullivan?
Yes, sorry.
Mashburn?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Beatty?
Aye.
Mayor Roulette?
Aye. We will be going to item 13, closed session. We are going to have a Zoom closed session for the council. There'll be nothing to report back out. So good night, Vacaville. Thank you.